If you've ever been alone on Christmas night, you know the quiet can feel heavier than usual, like the world is holding its breath. Most people imagine snow, lights, laughter. But sometimes the quiet isn't peaceful. Sometimes it's waiting. I had moved into a small town in upstate New York just a few months prior, the kind of town where everyone knows everyone else. And by 9, the streets are empty. My apartment was on the second floor of an old converted house. Right above a closed antique shop, the building creaked under the weight of winter, and the heating system groaned like it was carrying secrets of its own. Christmas Eve was calm. I had a small tree decorated with white lights, a few ornaments, and a stack of leftover cookies in the kitchen. Around 8, I heard it, a soft voice outside. At first, I thought it was children practicing carols in someone's yard. But the voice grew closer, deliberate, off-key, almost discordant, like someone learning the song as they went along. I looked through my balcony, but the street was empty. Snow crunched underfoot somewhere, but no footprints led toward me. My curiosity got the better of me, so I slipped on my boots and went downstairs. The street was completely empty. No cars, no neighbors, nothing. Then I saw it. Footprints in the snow forming a circle around my building, all pointing inward toward my apartment. No trail led away. It was as if someone had appeared, walked in a perfect circle, and vanished. I ran inside, locked the doors, and double-checked the windows. Every few minutes I thought I heard soft caroling through the walls, fading when I focused on it. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a light tap at the bedroom window. My heart stopped. I didn't want to look, but instinct forced me to glance. A figure stood pressed against the glass, perfectly still, head tilted, staring. My phone flashlight revealed nothing. I called the police. They arrived 20 minutes later, found no forced entry, no footprints, just the circle I had seen. Probably kids messing around, one officer said. I wanted to believe him. Morning came, and everything seemed normal. Snow untouched, streets silent. But on the antique shop door below my apartment was a single note. Thank you for listening. Weeks later, I noticed it wasn't over. Occasionally, late at night, I would hear the soft, off-key caroling again, almost imperceptible. Not every night, but enough that I knew it was still out there. And every time it came, I felt the same weight of eyes, the same unnatural stillness. That Christmas, I learned a harsh truth. Quiet isn't always peaceful. And sometimes, you're never truly alone. I've always loved small-town Christmases. The streets quiet under a blanket of snow. The occasional flicker of lights along the rooftops. The scent of pine and baked goods drifting through the air. But last year, I realized that quiet can hide something you don't want to see, and that Christmas Eve can be far from safe. I live in a 2-story townhouse in a suburban Pennsylvania neighborhood. Our street is lined with nearly identical houses, each with a small yard, colored lights strung across the roof lines, and wreaths on the doors. It was Christmas Eve, and I was alone. My roommate had gone to visit his family, and my parents were out of town. I had planned a quiet night decorating, baking cookies, watching old holiday movies. Around 11, I noticed movement outside the living room window. At first, I assumed it was a neighbor returning from an errand, but then I saw him. A man, tall, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk across the street. Not walking, not looking around, just staring directly at my house. I froze. Something about him felt off. The shadows under the street lamp made his face impossible to see. But the stillness, the unnatural posture, set every nerve on edge. I stayed behind the blinds holding my breath. After several minutes, he turned and walked slowly down the street, glancing back at my house once before disappearing around a corner. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was a late night walk. But then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible tap at my window, like someone lightly knocking, testing if I was home. My heart raced. I didn't move, didn't respond. The sound stopped. Around 1 a.m. I heard footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate, heavy. I gripped my phone and quietly called 911. The operator reassured me, but mentioned that response might be delayed since it was Christmas Eve. I stayed by the window, flashlight in hand, watching the empty street. Nothing. Silence. Then I noticed it in the reflection of the living room window, a shadow, standing just behind me. I spun around. My living room was empty. My heart hammered as I looked back at the window. The shadow had moved closer, now pressed against the glass, though still impossible to identify. My instincts screamed to flee, but I couldn't move. Hours passed like minutes. Every little sound, the creak of the floorboards, the faint rustle of the heating system felt amplified. At one point, a branch scraped against the window, and I flinched, expecting it to be him. But there was no branch large enough for that sound. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I was exhausted. I finally mustered the courage to step outside. The street looked normal. No footprints, no sign of intrusion. But when I walked along the sidewalk, I noticed something peculiar. Nearly every house on the street, including mine, had a faint scratch along the window frame. Small, almost invisible, like someone had traced a finger along the glass. My window had one too. I've moved since then, but every Christmas I replay that night in my mind. I still hear faint taps at windows, almost as if someone is testing to see if I'm home. And I can't shake the feeling that someone or something still walks the streets, watching quietly, waiting for the night when the houses are empty and the lights are bright. I learned that Christmas isn't always a time for warmth and comfort. Sometimes, the quiet streets hide more than holiday cheer. You think you know your neighborhood? You think the streets are safe, the lights are cheerful, and everyone is friendly? But sometimes the lights don't just decorate, they watch. I live in a suburban town in Michigan. It's the kind of place where every house has a light display. Snow covers the lawns in a perfect white blanket, and the quiet of Christmas Eve feels like a comfort. Last year I was home alone. My parents were visiting relatives, my sister was at a friend's house. I had the entire evening to myself, a warm fire, a tree full of ornaments, and a sense of calm that I would soon regret. Around 10, I stepped outside to take a picture of my decorations. The porch was modest, white lights along the roof line, a small evergreen tree in the corner, and a nativity scene my sister insisted on every year. That's when I noticed him, a neighbor I barely knew, walking slowly down the street. He stopped at the end of my yard and stared at the house. Not at the decorations, not at the lights. At me. I waved instinctively. He didn't wave back. He didn't move. He just stood there, perfectly still, before disappearing around the corner. I shook it off and went inside, telling myself I was imagining things. But later, my porch lights started flickering. Just a few bulbs, off and on in a sequence that felt deliberate, almost like a signal. My stomach tightened. I went to the window and saw a shadow at the edge of the porch. I froze. It wasn't human, or at least it didn't behave like one. Then a soft brush of wind touched my arm, and I spun around. Nothing. I tried to convince myself it was electrical issues or fatigue, but instinct told me otherwise. The flickering lights seemed to move in patterns, guiding attention across the yard. Every time I looked away, I felt it. A presence just beyond my sight, always near the glow of the lights. Around midnight, I decided to call 911. I explained what I was seeing, the shadow, the flickering lights, the strange feeling of being watched. The operator suggested an animal or faulty wiring, but I knew what I had felt. Something wasn't right. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle in the trees made me jump. At one point I swore I heard soft humming, low and discordant, drifting from the street into my yard. My eyes darted toward the lights. The shadow was back, moving slowly along the edges of the porch, disappearing whenever I tried to focus on it. By dawn, I forced myself outside. The snow was untouched. The lights were normal, steady. No sign of footprints, no sign of intrusion, except for a small circle around the tree. Series of shallow depressions in the snow, like someone had walked on tiptoe. In the center, a single faint footprint pointed directly at my front door. I packed and moved soon after, but every Christmas, when I see white lights blinking along someone else's porch, I can't help but pause and watch. Every flicker, every shadow, every soft hum makes me wonder if it's still happening there. In that house I used to call home, watching, waiting. Sometimes I swear I can feel eyes on me, drawn to the lights from somewhere just out of reach. And I know that quiet Christmas nights are never truly safe. You've already stepped too far into the dark. Subscribe, and let the shadows whisper their next truth directly into your ear.